If the life you built with your own hands suddenly feels like it belongs to a stranger, if the places you called home now feel hollow, distant, almost wrong, if you wake up most mornings carrying a weight you cannot name, this is not a crisis. That invisible emptiness, that quiet sense of not fitting anywhere anymore, is not weakness. It's not confusion. And it is absolutely not the end of your story. In this video, you're going to understand the phase that no one ever prepares you for. The hidden map behind what your soul is doing right now, beneath all that silence and uncertainty. Stay with me until the very end, because in the final part, I'm going to show you something most people never realize in time, why that deep strangeness you feel, the eerie sensation that your own life no longer fits you, is actually the first quiet signal that a profound identity transformation has already begun inside you. Before you were even conscious of it, there's a particular kind of loneliness that spiritual books rarely describe. It's not the loneliness of being alone in a room. It's the loneliness of standing in the middle of your own life, surrounded by everything you once wanted, and feeling absolutely nothing. Or worse, feeling like a guest in a story that was written for someone else. Maybe you've been here for a while now. Maybe it started quietly. A relationship that ended, a career that stopped making sense, a city that once felt like home but now feels like a costume you've outgrown. Maybe it started with something you can't even name. Just a slow, creeping feeling that the version of you that used to fit all of this doesn't exist anymore. And here's what makes it so disorienting. Nothing catastrophic may have happened. From the outside, your life might look perfectly fine, but on the inside, something has shifted, a frequency has changed, and suddenly the familiar feels foreign. You've probably looked for answers, in conversations that went nowhere, in books that came close but never quite landed, in spirituality that felt too vague, or in logic that felt too cold. What if both were missing a piece? What if what you're living through right now isn't a problem to be solved, but a process to be understood? This channel exists exactly for moments like this one, for the person who senses there's something deeper behind the chaos, something intelligent, something intentional, but hasn't yet found the language to describe it. Today, we're going to build that language together. We're going to look at three things: the invisible symptom that most people misread as failure, what it actually means when your soul starts to outgrow its container, and what quietly begins to emerge on the other side of that collapse, a version of you that couldn't have been born any other way. You didn't find this video by accident, and whatever brought you here today, that quiet pull, that nudge from somewhere deeper than your mind, it already knows what you need to hear. So let's begin. Let's talk about something that almost no one names correctly. There's a symptom that appears at the beginning of every deep internal transformation. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a revelation or a lightning bolt of clarity. It arrives quietly, almost gently. And it looks, from the outside, like nothing at all. It feels like this. You walk into a room you've walked into 1,000 times before, and something feels off. Not wrong in a way you can explain, just off, like the room is the same, but you are not. You sit with people you love, people who know you well, and you feel a subtle distance you can't bridge. Not because they've changed, not because the love is gone, but because somewhere inside you, a conversation has started that you don't yet have words for. You look at plans you made for your career, your relationships, your future, and they feel like blueprints for a house you no longer want to live in. Everything is technically still there, but the sense of belonging has quietly left the building. This is the invisible symptom, and here's why it's so dangerous to ignore. Most people, when they feel this, immediately try to fix it. They redecorate the house, hoping it will feel like home again. They work harder, trying to reignite a passion that has already moved on. They try to convince themselves that the distance they feel is temporary. A bad week, a bad month, a phase that will pass if they just hold on long enough. But the symptom doesn't leave, because it was never a malfunction. Think of it this way. Imagine a plant that has been growing steadily inside a pot. For a long time, that pot was perfect. The right size, the right shape, the right container for everything the plant needed. But roots keep growing even when no one is watching. And one day, the roots begin to press against the walls. Not because something went wrong, because something went very, very right. The discomfort is not the problem. The pot has simply become too small. You are that plant. And the life that once held you perfectly, the identity, the relationships, the environment, the version of yourself you inhabited for years, has become a container your soul is quietly, persistently outgrowing. The strangeness you feel in familiar places, that's not emptiness, that's pressure, the pressure of a self that is expanding beyond the shape it was given. Now, here's the part that most people miss entirely, and this is important, so stay with me. This symptom almost always appears before any conscious decision to change, before you decide to leave, before you understand what's happening, before you even have the words for what you're feeling, which means your soul began this transformation before your mind agreed to it. Your deeper self, the part of you that operates beyond logic, beyond habit, beyond the story you've been told about who you are, started the process first. The confusion you feel right now is simply your conscious mind catching up to a shift that has already happened at a level you can't fully see yet. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not losing your way. You are catching up to yourself. And just ahead, in the next part of this video, we're going to look at what this actually means from a deeper spiritual perspective. Because once you understand the mechanics of what's happening beneath the surface, everything starts to make a very different kind of sense. Now let's go deeper, because what you're experiencing isn't just psychological, it isn't just emotional, and it certainly isn't random. What's happening to you right now has a name in almost every wisdom tradition that has ever tried to map the inner journey of a human being. They called it different things: the dark night of the soul, the void, the threshold, the in-between, but they were all pointing at the same invisible doorway. You are standing in the space between who you were and who you are becoming. And that space, that strange, disorienting, uncomfortable in-between, is not empty. It only feels that way. In reality, it is one of the most energetically active places a human being can inhabit. Here's a way to think about it that might shift everything. In quantum physics, there's a concept called the collapse of the wave function. In simple terms, a particle exists in multiple potential states simultaneously. It is, quite literally, everywhere at once, until the moment it is observed. The moment it is seen, it collapses into one single reality, one definite position, one chosen form. Your identity works in a similar way. Before a deep transformation, you exist in a state of quantum potentiality. The old version of you is dissolving. The new version hasn't fully materialized yet, and in that space between, that uncomfortable void where nothing feels certain, all of your possible selves exist simultaneously. The person you were, the person you're afraid to become, the person you secretly know you already are, the confusion, the blankness, the strange detachment from your old life. That is the collapse happening. That is the moment just before one specific, more aligned version of you chooses to emerge. You are not lost in the void. You are in the void because the void is where new realities are born. Now, there's something else happening beneath this that almost no one talks about. When your soul begins to outgrow its current identity, the universe, or whatever name you give to that intelligent organizing force behind existence, begins to quietly rearrange your external world to match your internal frequency. Not always gently, not always at a pace that feels comfortable. Sometimes it removes people, not because they are bad, but because they belong to a version of your story that is ending. Sometimes it closes doors you were certain were meant to stay open, not as punishment, but as redirection. Sometimes it makes the familiar feel foreign, specifically so you stop clinging to it. The universe doesn't make your old life uncomfortable because it has abandoned you. It makes it uncomfortable because it is trying to move you. Think about how a river works. Water doesn't fight the landscape. It finds every crack, every opening, every place where movement is possible. And when a rock blocks its path, the water doesn't stop. It accumulates. It builds pressure. Until eventually the path opens, and the water rushes forward with more force than before. You are that water right now. And the pressure you feel, the restlessness, the longing, the quiet grief for a life that no longer fits, is not stagnation. It is accumulation. You are building the force for what comes next. There's something your higher self already knows that your everyday mind is still resisting. This phase was not a detour. It was always part of the route. Every mystic, every teacher, every person who has walked a genuine path of inner awakening has passed through exactly this threshold. The feeling of not belonging, the sensation of being between worlds, the strange grief of outgrowing a life before you have a new one to step into, is not a sign that you chose wrong. It is a sign that you are finally choosing more deeply. And here is what I want you to sit with before we move forward, before I show you what actually begins to emerge on the other side of this collapse. The fact that you are here, watching this, searching for something beyond the surface explanation, that is not coincidence. That is your higher self, already oriented toward the next version of your life, pulling you toward the frequency of what's coming. You haven't been wandering, you've been navigating. In the next part, we're going to talk about what that navigation leads to. What quietly, unexpectedly, begins to be born in the space left behind by everything you've released. And why what emerges could not have arrived any other way. Let's talk about what no one tells you when you're in the middle of it. When you're standing in the ruins of a version of yourself, when the relationship is over, the identity has crumbled, the old certainties have gone quiet, every voice around you is trying to help you rebuild as fast as possible. Get back to normal, find your footing, move on, be okay. But there is a sacred, irreplaceable process that happens in the silence after a collapse. And when you rush it, when you fill the void too quickly with noise, with distraction, with the urgent need to feel stable again, you accidentally interrupt the most important construction project of your entire life, because something is being built in there, quietly, in the dark, without your permission and without your full awareness, and it is more real than anything you've ever been before. Here is what the collapse actually makes room for. First, it strips away identity layers that were never truly yours. Most of what we call ourselves was assembled by other people. The family that shaped our earliest beliefs. The culture that told us what success should look like. The relationships that defined us by who we were to someone else. The version of you that existed before this collapse was a beautiful, genuine, lived experience. But it was also, in part, a construction. A self built for belonging. A self built for survival. A self built to be acceptable in spaces that may no longer be where you're meant to exist. The collapse burns through those layers, not cruelly, precisely. What remains after that fire is something that cannot be faked, cannot be performed, and cannot be borrowed from anyone else's expectations. What remains is the most honest signal your soul has ever sent you about who you actually are underneath all of it. That rawness you feel right now, that is not damage, that is clarity. Second, the collapse recalibrates your frequency. In energetic terms, every version of yourself vibrates at a particular frequency. It attracts certain people, certain experiences, certain timelines that match its resonance. The old version of you, the one that belonged to the life that is now dissolving, was broadcasting a signal that called in everything you have already lived. When that version begins to dissolve, your frequency becomes temporarily undefined. And that undefined state feels terrifying from the inside. It feels like silence where there used to be music, like static where there used to be a clear channel. But here is what's actually happening. You are between signals. The old broadcast has ended. The new one hasn't fully locked in yet, and in that gap, in that quiet, uncertain, almost unbearable in-between, your entire energetic field is being recalibrated toward a version of reality you haven't yet been able to receive. Think of it like tuning an instrument before a concert. The discordant sounds in the middle of the tuning process are not the music failing. They are the music being prepared. You are being tuned. Third, and this is the part I want you to really feel, the collapse introduces you to a version of yourself that could only exist on the other side of loss. There are qualities that cannot be developed in comfort. Depth cannot be built in shallow water. Compassion cannot grow without having known real pain. Wisdom cannot arrive without having first been genuinely lost. The version of you that is quietly emerging right now, the one you can almost sense at the edge of your awareness, the one that feels unfamiliar but somehow more true, carries gifts that your previous self simply did not have access to, not because you weren't capable before, but because those gifts are forged specifically in this kind of fire. The person who survives this threshold, who walks through the strangeness, the grief, the disorientation, the long silence of not knowing, emerges with something rare, a groundedness that doesn't depend on external conditions, a sense of self that doesn't dissolve when relationships end or circumstances shift, an inner compass that points toward authenticity rather than approval. You cannot buy that. You cannot shortcut your way to it. You can only live your way through it. And here's something I want you to consider, something that might feel strange at first, but stay with it. What if the version of you that is emerging already exists? In the language of quantum consciousness, every possible version of you is real. The version that stayed, the version that left, the version that chose differently 10 years ago, the version that is fully aligned, fully alive, fully inhabiting the life your soul has always been oriented toward. That version exists right now, in the parallel layer of the field you are a part of. And what this collapse is doing, at its deepest level, is not destroying your life. It is collapsing the distance between who you currently are and who you already are at the level of your highest potential. It is pulling you, sometimes roughly, sometimes gracefully, toward an already existing version of yourself that has been waiting for your frequency to rise high enough to reach it. You are not building something from nothing. You are closing the gap between who you are and who you've always been. And that process, as disorienting and as painful as it can be, is perhaps the most profound thing a human being can experience while still living an ordinary life. The old you had to become unfamiliar, so the real you could finally feel like home. In the next and final part of our journey today, I want to offer you something practical, not a formula, not a 5-step plan, but a gentle, grounded reflection. Something you can carry with you after this video ends and the screen goes dark, because understanding what is happening is the first step, but learning how to move through it with intention, with trust, with your eyes open, that is where the real transformation takes root. Before we close this journey together, I want to slow everything down, not to summarize what we've covered, not to repeat the ideas, but to give you something you can actually use right now, today. in the middle of whatever version of this transition you are living through. Because information without integration is just noise, and you came here for something more than noise. So take a breath with me for a moment. Wherever you are right now, whatever room, whatever city, whatever version of your life you're sitting inside of, just let yourself be fully present in it. Not trying to fix it, not trying to rush past it. Just here, there is a question I want to offer you, not a question to answer out loud, not a question to journal about right now unless you feel moved to, just a question to carry. And the question is this: what version of myself am I grieving? And what is that grief trying to show me about who I actually want to become? Sit with that for a moment, because grief, in the context of inner transformation, is one of the most misunderstood signals we carry. We are taught to move through it as fast as possible, to process it, box it, release it, and get back to functioning. But grief, real soul-level grief for a version of yourself that is ending, is not a wound to be healed as quickly as possible. It is a map. The things you grieve tell you what you valued. The relationships you mourn tell you what kind of love you're actually capable of. The version of yourself you miss tells you which qualities you want to carry forward, and which ones you are finally, quietly ready to leave behind. Your grief is not holding you back. Your grief is pointing forward. Now I want to offer you 3 gentle anchors. Not rules, not practices you have to commit to forever, just 3 simple orientations that can help you move through this phase with a little more trust and a little less resistance. The first anchor is this: stop explaining yourself to the old timeline. One of the most exhausting things about being in transition is the pressure, real or imagined, to justify why you no longer fit where you used to belong. To explain to the people who knew the old version of you why you've changed. To make the unfamiliar feel acceptable to those who preferred the familiar version. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your evolution. The caterpillar does not apologize to the other caterpillars for becoming something they cannot yet imagine. Your only responsibility in this phase is to honor the process, not to make it legible to people who are living in a different chapter. The second anchor: treat the silence as signal, not absence. When the universe goes quiet, when synchronicities slow down, when inspiration feels distant, when nothing seems to be moving, the instinct is to panic, to assume you've lost connection, to fill the silence with frantic action or anxious searching. But silence in a spiritual transition is almost never absence. It is preparation. It is the pause between the inhale and the exhale. It is the field reorganizing itself before it offers you the next clear sign. When everything goes quiet, that is not the moment to force movement. That is the moment to deepen your roots. To become so grounded in the present version of yourself, however incomplete, however uncertain, that when the next door opens, you walk through it from a place of clarity rather than desperation. The universe does not delay your evolution, it paces it. And the third anchor, perhaps the most important one for where you are right now: let the strangeness be evidence, not emergency. Every time you feel that uncanny sense of not fitting in a conversation, in a room, in a version of your own life, instead of contracting around it, try to receive it as information. That strangeness is your expanded self brushing up against the edges of a container that no longer holds it. It is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is a sign that something has gone right. Deeper and more fundamentally right than your conscious mind has yet been able to fully register. The places that feel wrong are not your failures. They are your compass, and I want to leave you with one final image before we close. Imagine a night sky just before dawn. The darkness is at its most complete, deeper somehow than the middle of the night. The stars that guided you through the dark hours are beginning to fade, and the new light hasn't arrived yet. There is a moment, brief, quiet, almost imperceptible, where the sky holds both at once. The last of the dark and the first of the light, neither night nor morning, a threshold that has no name. That is where you are right now. Not in the darkness, not yet in the full light, but in that sacred, nameless moment where both exist simultaneously, where the old is still releasing and the new is just beginning to breathe. Most people spend their entire lives trying to skip that moment, to jump from the certainty of the old directly into the certainty of the new, without ever standing in the in-between. But you are here, in the threshold, awake enough to feel it, brave enough to stay, and that, more than any plan, more than any answer, more than any version of certainty you might be chasing, is exactly where transformation lives. You are not waiting for your life to begin. Your life is beginning right now, in the discomfort you are willing to sit inside of. Do you remember what I promised you at the beginning? Now you have it. That strangeness you feel in familiar places is not something breaking inside you. It is the first quiet evidence of something emerging. The places that no longer fit are not your failures. They are the edges of who you used to be, and the first outline of who you are becoming. You were never lost. You were always in the process of being found. This video ends here, but what it awakened in you is only beginning. Remember this: the blank space before a new path is not emptiness. It is the universe holding its breath before it speaks your new name. If this touched something real in you, subscribe. This channel exists precisely for people walking the kind of transition no one around them fully understands. Leave a comment below. Write, "I trust my new self," or share a synchronicity you've lived recently that you still can't explain. That small act anchors you to the timeline you're already moving toward. And if you're ready to go deeper, the next video is on the screen right now. Why your future looks blank before a new path reveals itself. It picks up exactly where this one ends. You don't have to walk this road alone. I'll see you in the next one.